I think there's four parts of creating a flywheel in our space: attention, demonstration, conversion, duplication. I spent more than 5 years losing money in network marketing and went on to become one of the highest income earners in the world, producing more than 22 billion with a B, $22 billion worth of revenue for myself, team, my clients, and proteges. My name is Randy Gage, and this is the Duplication Nation MLM Pod. And it's dedicated to sharing with you the lessons that I learned that can help you grow your business successfully.
You've been lied to, and in a way that it may be hurting your business. Because many people told you that the only thing you need is developing your leadership to be very successful in network marketing. And that's a lie. Let me tell you something. When I joined network marketing like 16 years ago, I was very good in leadership. I was a CEO of a company. I studied leadership since I was 14 years old, and they told me you only need to be a good leader. So I started recruiting people and recruiting people and recruiting people. And my team was kind of a tag team, in wrestling. Every time one person joined my team, another one would leave, and two would come and two would leave. And that was my story until I found, like Indiana Jones when he opened the chest and some light came to his eyes. I opened a case of CDs. My friend millennials, maybe you don't know what I'm talking about. CDs, those stuff where you could listen to music. But these CDs were called Duplication University, developed by a guy called Randy Gage. And he was telling there that you need two things. You need to develop your leadership, for sure. That's one thing you need. But you also need a system. And I didn't have that. The moment I started using a system, that's the moment where my tribe start really growing, where people would stay with me, where people could do stuff where I wasn't there because I was the big leader. Everything was around me. When I started using a really good system, which by the way was the exact system that Randy was telling us to use, that's where everything changed for me. And because of that, I built a business with tens of thousands of people in it, which was impossible to think without something that could be replicated. And that would be, something that you can grow predictably. It should be predictable, that people would know exactly what to do every day and what to do every week and what to do when you bring someone to the team. It should be predictable and it should be scalable. And what's the problem? The problem is that most people think that they are already using a system because they know that they should use one video, for example. But that's not the whole system. You only have a method of operation. You don't have a whole system. If you are stuck in your business, if you are not growing anymore, if you feel that all your team is revolving around you and when you are not there, your team is not working, that's because you don't have a real system. And that's what we're going to do here with my esteemed colleague and friend and mentor and the guy who taught me this stuff, Mr. Randy Gage. How are you?
I am fabulous. And you look fabulous. And in case you don't know, depending how the screen is working, that is Jaime Loquier, because you never introduced yourself. And of course, we're here talking about recruiting, duplication, but more specifically, recruiting, because that is the linchpin of it. And you know what I want to start with, Jaime, and just welcome, good afternoon from Miami. Jaime's down in Uruguay. Good evening to you guys in Europe and Scandinavia, and I know we've got people coming in from Asia, so a happy Saturday to you guys. And hello to all you guys on the replay. Where I would begin is the concept of a flywheel. The guy who's best credited with this concept is Jim Collins. He wrote a book called Good to Great. And he talked about how great companies create these flywheels that just keep moving customers in this circular motion, so they're always re-engaging, rebuying, becoming bigger customers, better customers. Because the only way you grow business, there's only a couple of, basically three things you can do, right? You convert customers, you convert candidates into customers, and then you can get them to buy more often, and you could get them to buy more, bigger amounts, and hopefully you get them on some kind of subscription. If, like in our case, if your company has AutoShip. And that's it. Every business strategy, every PhD program, dissertation on how to grow business, they all go back to those things. So I love this concept of a flywheel, and I thought, why does nobody apply this in network marketing? And we've got to have that flywheel effect. And so we're able to do that because it's so simple, it's deceptive. It's so like those three things you can do to grow a business, right? They're so simple. You say, well, no, if I'm going to pay $50,000 to a consultant, I want them to use big words and complex, explanations. And nobody wants to hear, no, it's actually very simple. Doesn't mean it's easy. Of course, you got to do the work, put in the effort, but it is simple. So the flywheel is, let me go to my TIONs, my shuns. I think there's 4 parts of creating a flywheel in our space: attention, demonstration, conversion, duplication. So if you understand those 4 steps, then you do a flywheel, because when you get to the duplication part at the end, you have the new distributor training, which shows them how to do the first step, attention, and it starts the process all over again. So that creates the flywheel. There's always new people coming into the structure. So what I think would be really, we're doing a duplication lab in a couple of weeks. That's mind-blowing, never been done anything, no one in our space has ever done anything like that. And we're gonna go into these things in depth, but for you guys watching the live stream, I would like to just share real simple the tripwires and the stumbling blocks that prevent you from having. That's why I say it's simple, but it's not easy. Attention, what's the problem? The problem is it's hard to get attention. People are scrolling on TikTok 6 hours a day. They've got a phone screen, they got a tablet, they're watching TV, they're talking to their spouse. Everybody's working on 5 screens. It's harder than ever to cut through the white noise. So where companies fall down, where leaders fall down, they don't have a mass market recruiting tool. They don't, and I'm gonna hold these up, we're not promoting any company, we're gonna use case studies for all of them. But in other words, it's a booklet like this, or this, oops, I gotta go the right way, or this. These are all ones that we've created for clients or our teams, or this is a different look, a special report we did back in the day when we were in the Agile heyday. Something to get attention, something that people who are not experienced marketers can use to get attention. You need a sizzle video, let's say. But you know how many sizzle videos have no sizzle? Or you have an intrigue video and the intrigue video has no intrigue? That's where people fall down. And the other thing would be bad training. You don't teach people how to invite in a compelling way. The tripwires with demonstration, because that's the presentation part, is they're feature centric. Our company's been in business for 15 years. We're a debt-free company. Our mission is this. Our values are that. Our vision is that. Nobody cares about that stuff. Your marketing has to be centric to the candidate centric. So that's where it falls down. And it really, where I see it fall down the most is they don't show the concept of leverage. People, leverage is the sexy part of our business. It's the only way. This is how we escape trading hours for money. And this is what the great entrepreneurs of all time do, right? But if you're not conveying that in your presentation, it's going to fall flat. And más importante, you not only have to show leverage, but you have to put the candidate in the picture. In other words, they got to see how do they get leverage. Conversion, it's pretty simple. What does conversion mean? We got to convert candidates into customers or candidates into distributors. Single biggest tripwire I see here, nobody does the call to action, right? They do, you'll watch somebody do an 80-minute Facebook Live and all kind of PowerPoint slides, and they go on, and then it just ends. And nobody says, here's what needs to happen next. Other tripwire here is, I believe very strongly there needs to be 3 activation order packs, like combo packages of product and marketing materials. And you got to do them at the psychological price points. And then the fourth thing is duplication, right? Where people fall down here is they don't have the marketing tools. They don't have the videos, the magazines, the brochures, the live streams. In other words, look at how many health companies have doctors and nurses and chiropractors and massage therapists who are making these health presentations, and money companies that have financial planners and accountants doing it. They're subject matter experts, so they can make great presentations, but they can't be duplicated. You can't, there has to be, one of the things we're going to talk about at the lab is a 3-point triangle. Should never be a dynamic where it's just you conveying the information to a candidate. There has to be 3 points: you, the candidate, and an external source tool. So what you're doing with the candidate is you're pointing them to the tool, edifying the tool, and the tool is providing the information to the candidate, because that can be duplicated. So either they don't have external source tools, or here's the one you got to watch out for. They have terrible tools, boring tools, feature-centric tools like we talked about. They're just not compelling. They're not effective. And then, of course, the single most important element at the end of that is when somebody does become a distributor, you've got some kind of new distributor orientation to rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's the flywheel.
Yeah, and something that we like telling people, and I've been mentioning this for many years, is that if you want to teach your team something, you need to be able to make a graph about it. If you can't make a graph, at least in your mind, of something, you won't be able to explain it. And that's why I like saying that all these different elements that Randy is telling you should be placed in any kind of structure. So for example, I always suggest a 3-part structure with all those elements. I assume that in English structure means the same as in Spanish. It's many elements placed in a specific way. So I tend...
Structure would be a bridge, right? You have the suspension cables and the pillars and everything, and they make up that structure.
Exactly. So in this case, you need to have a structure, because that's what people can build upon. You know, they know exactly what to expect. That's something they can use with all their team. So usually the leader is the one that puts the structure in place, or the company, if the company knows how
Or
to do it,
yeah.
they put the structure, and then everyone can walk on that bridge. So in this case, what you need is a three-part structure with all these elements that Randy is talking about. The first of these elements, of these three parts, is a candidate pathway. So it's the part of the structure that you do for your marketing, let's say, to bring all your candidates through, so they go from not knowing anything about you to saying, I want to be part of this, or I want your product. So usually this structure is made of tools that will help your team in each part of the process. And you need to have this graph that you can teach your team, telling them this is step number 1, this is step number 2, this is step number 3, and this is the tool that you will use on step number 1, and this is the tool you will use on step number 2. If they tell you that they want product, then you take them to this tool. If they tell you that they want business, you take them to this tool. So it's, as the name suggests, is a path from tool to tool to tool to tool that all your team knows they how to use. And something very important about this candidate pathway is that more or less all companies use the same steps. You know, some companies tell you that they have 5 steps, and some companies tell you that they have 9 steps, but they are mostly the same. Just they divide one into 2 sub steps, but it's the same. It's meeting people, working a candidate list with those people that you meet, presenting your opportunity and your products, doing follow-up. It's the same basic process. So the only thing you need is to have the tools to explain them exactly what goes after what. And why is this so important? Because clarity is one of the main things your team needs to actually keep moving. When you lose clarity, you stop working. When you stop working, numbers fall apart. And that's where things get complicated. And that's why you want to have one system for all your team. There are many teams that are basing everything only on energy, only on emotion, because that works at the beginning. When you only have 10 people in your team, it's very easy to grow only based on emotion. But when you have 100 people or 300 people or 500 people, then you can't be everywhere. Even with Zoom, even with artificial intelligence, even with everything we have to our disposal right now, it's not enough for one person to lead a huge tribe. So there will be a moment that you will need more leaders doing exactly the same. And why they need to use exactly the same tools? Because otherwise, the rest of the team will be confused. If you have 3 people doing different systems, then the new members of the team won't know which one they need to use. They will be confused. And a confused mind don't work. A confused mind always stops working. So that's why you want to have this structure. Now, of course, everyone will do it with their own, we say in Mexico, with their own spices. You know, everyone will do it with their own flavor, but they will using the same tools. And that's what makes it so attractive, because you can lead, you can put your own flavor to it, but you will be doing the same as the rest of the team because you are using the same videos and the same catalogs and the same web pages. So that's the first very important structure. Randy just told you that we're gonna do a lab on June. So one of the things we're gonna do on that lab for 4 days, we're gonna build with you this candidate pathway, which is very important, and most people don't know how to do, because most people don't know how to do good tools for network marketing. So If you feel that you don't have this candidate pathway solved, I'm going to give you the webpage where you can check that. It's duplicationlab.com. Okay, you can go there and check the rest of the information. So, Randy, do you have something to say about the candidate pathway?
The thing is, it pulls people through the process, and every distributor knows what to do because you have an actual chart of the candidate pathway. It is like in your new distributor orientation. So they know, oh, okay, the first step is I got to pre-qualify this person. So it says I could pre-qualify them by asking these specific questions, or I could pre-qualify them with this booklet that is to find out if they're a candidate, or I could pre-qualify them with this 2.5-minute sizzle video, right? So that's now we find out, okay, are they a candidate for they just want to use the products? Then we send them in the customer product pathway. If they're intrigued by building a team, creating income, then we're going to send them through the builder pathway. And then it'll say, okay, so the next step in the builder pathway is a full presentation. So you're going to invite them to the weekly Facebook live stream presentation, or you're going to send them a link to the 18.5-minute company opportunity presentation video. Every step, there's the action to take and the tool you use. And that's what makes it work, so that it creates the flywheel.
Exactly. And then the second part of this structure that you need, the first one is the candidate pathway. The second part of the structure is what we call a ladder of escalation, which, as its name suggests, is like a ladder of events. And why it's a ladder? Because you are going one step up in each of those events. Each event is bigger than the previous one, and it has more energy than the previous one, and is like something more compelling to the candidates, all your prospects, but also for the team. Because have you noticed how the team is losing energy as the year goes by, and it's losing energy, and then your big convention comes and everything grows again and everyone is already excited again? It's like little chihuahuas with Red Bull in their veins, they are very excited, and then it happens again the next year. So you are building the emotion, one event to the other event. So this also needs to be something that is predictable, so your team knows what's the type of event that we have every day, and what's the kind of event that we have every week, and what's the event we have every month, and what's the big event we have every year. That's the ladder of escalation, in which each of those events is bigger than the other one. So if it's less frequent, it's bigger. The monthly one is bigger than the weekly one, and the weekly one is bigger than the daily one. And you need to have all of them. We had a client that we had together. It was an amazing company with an amazing product, with amazing leaders, but they were stuck. And we checked their ladder of escalation, and we noticed that they had the daily activities, and they had the monthly activities, and the yearly activities, but they didn't have any weekly event. So the moment we noticed that, we started working with them to implement a weekly event, which is very important, because on the weekly event is where you can promote the monthly one. If you don't have the weekly one, people disengage, and then you have way less participation when you do the monthly one. So it changed everything for them, because they had this whole concept of how to build a ladder of escalation. And that's the second part of this structure. Randy, I don't know if you have something about this.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, I'd like to do 2 weekly events. One is an opportunity presentation. One is something we call a leadership academy. We don't have time to go into that. If you haven't That book of mine Jaime held up earlier, that's got a whole chapter on that. Very compelling way to grow your team, right? Well, what happens when there's 2 events every week? People get reminded that they're in business every week because they get an email from the company. Oh, the opportunity presentation is tomorrow at that. They get a text from their sponsor. Hey, the Leadership Academy is tonight. Or, hey, I need you to volunteer. Can you help at the Leadership Academy? If you have an event once a month, they'll be reminded once a month they have a business. If you have weekly events, they'll be reminded every week they have a business. That ladder of escalation, each time it goes up, it makes the candidate see the presentation through a bigger window. Each time it goes up, it provides more social proof. And here's the other little known thing people don't understand is as you escalate, you're actually going to deeper dive into the product info in the customer case, or deeper dive into the comp plan and the logistics and the business info for the builders. Why is that important? Because it's only as they get to the lower levels that they can process that information. Let's suppose you're trying to recruit somebody who's a professional baseball player in the major leagues, or the professional football player who plays for Barca or Real. They're going to say, okay, no, I need the exact ingredient of every product. I need to know the caloric intake. I need to know what does this do to my blood sugar. I need to know are any of these banned substances? Are these certified by WADA or Informed Sport or whatever? So you think, wow, I got to know all this. No, for 999 out of 1,000 people, they don't want to know all that information. And if you do that, you're going to lose them. Because what Jaime said earlier, you're going to confuse them, and the confused mind always says no. If they are a professional athlete, the escalation will get them to the point where they get that extra information. The point where the person says, no, you said there's a car program and I get a free BMW. I want to know exactly what do I have to do to earn the BMW. But if you try to put all of that in the first presentation, you have a 3-hour presentation and you're putting people in a coma. So the escalation, there's a science to this, that we're expanding the window, going deeper in the information, but we're doing it in a way that the candidate can mentally process and assimilate and create an emotional response to the information.
Beautiful. Well, so that's number 2. And then the third part of the structure is your training platform. And I don't mean only the online platform, I mean the whole platform, the whole system, to be redundant, of how you train your people. And this also needs to be based on tools so everyone can replicate it, and so you can scale it. Because if you are training all your team with your own mouth, there will be a moment that you won't be able to grow anymore. It doesn't matter who you are. And I experienced that when I joined network marketing. I was doing every Saturday on my own home. I was doing the training for all my team until we were 100 people on my living room, which was a small house. So we were all mushed like that. But anyway,
here's my theory. 7 generations. Pick the most charismatic person you know, right? Oprah Winfrey, Lady Gaga, Jimmy Kimmel, The Rock, whoever. The most compelling, entertaining, charismatic. They can build 7 levels deep on personality. But even the most charismatic person in the world, by the time you get down to the 8th, 9th, 10th level, you can't be in their living room. You can't talk to them all personally. They're too far down. They're too wide, and the cult of personality will no longer be effective after 7 levels.
For sure. And as you can imagine, I was no Jimmy Kimmel and no Oprah Winfrey and no cars for everyone. So I wasn't able to go seven.
You didn't have a car for everyone?
I wasn't giving cars to everyone. That was the problem in my business. So, but I got to 100 people in my living room, which by the time was amazing because I never had anything like that in my life.
Right.
But after that, it was really impossible. So you need to have the tools and you need to have all this structure so you can train your people. For example, you need to have a standardized new member orientation, something where you have a workbook, even if it's on the phone, but something where people can read what they need to do, and you can link that with QRs to videos that teach them exactly how to get their first wins, because you know how important is that. Actually, I think that the most important part of this structure is this new member orientation, because
there's no flywheel without it.
Yeah.
And the quality of the flywheel is determined by the quality of that new member orientation, for sure.
Absolutely. That's where you really build the culture, with how you train the new people. So that's something you need to have on this part of the structure. And then you want to have the basic trainings. Something I see a lot with leaders in network marketing is that we want to surprise our leaders. We want to give them new content so they say, wow, Jaime is such an amazing speaker. He's always bringing something new. This week, he taught us how to hypnotize prospects so they say yes to everything we sell to them. And and that's a huge mistake. You need to have...
It's such an ego boost, right? Oh my God, did you see what Randy did last night? He got a new training, the 27 secrets of enrolling. And they got a list and they wrote 7 pages. And then 2 weeks from now, I need to do the 13 deadly sins of this. And 2 weeks later, the 14 ways to, and how does anybody duplicate that? So we got to tell a new joke. We can tell a new story. We can use a new case study, a new example, but we got to be following the same structure that everyone else does.
Yeah, let me confess something. I was very successful in network marketing because I was very dumb and very ignorant. I didn't know anything about neuromarketing and PNL and all those stuff. I didn't know anything about that. And I was trained by a guy who was from the army, Yair Barlev. He was a guy from the army, and he was very strict, so he was telling you need to do a list and you call this amount of people, and this is what you need to do. You need to call 200 people, and that's it. You don't know anything else, and you need to tell the story of your business.
Why is he not registered for the Leadership Lab? Whoever's watching this, somebody has to know Yair. You better send him a link and tell him to watch this. He's like you say, and he is that army guy, right? I mean, he's like Jocko Willits is?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the same type.
He's like the Jocko Willits of network marketing, right?
Absolutely. I love that nickname for him.
So anyway, go ahead. I interrupted, but I just thought, man, where's Yair? He needs to be at this thing.
Well, he's the guy who trained me in network marketing, and he was teaching us his system. And I was still new, when you are new, you are like a prospect with your place in the tree. So I was telling him that he was wrong and that I didn't like what he was teaching. So he told me, "You, fuera," in Spanish, you go out. So he threw me away of that place. And after the training, I came back and told him, "You know what? I'm sorry. I was misbehaving there. But it was your fault because you were speaking about all your system and I don't have enough mind for that. So I need you to tell me one thing and I will be the guy doing it better than anyone." And I really, really thought that he would kick me away from there saying that. But instead, he extended his hand and he said, "It's a deal. I will tell you one thing and you need to be the one that does it better than anyone else. And you need to promise that you won't learn anything else. This is what you're going to do." Okay, what is it? Every day from your mouth, you need to tell the business opportunity. But it must be from your mouth. It's not just, what he meant is that it's not that I could bring my people to another presentation. I needed to learn how to do it. Of course, now we do it with videos and we don't need to learn anything, but that was at the moment. Every day you need to give a business opportunity. That was the deal. And that's what changed my business, because that's the only thing I did. That's the only thing I trained my team. Every week was a training on how to present, how to meet people, how to present to that people, how to meet people, how to present to that people. That was my only training. And that was the system. It was a very short, brief, simple system, but that's why I built something so huge, because it was very clear.
All right, you have any more you want to say on that training example, or are we moving on?
Yeah, just very quick. You need to have all the system you want for your team. So let's say you have 6 skills you want your team to learn. You need to have a roll-up of those things, and you want to go one every week, and you go back and you teach them again, and you go back and you teach them again. Or if you have 6 skills and then you want them to work on mindset, you can have mindset in between each skill. So you have 12 weeks roll over. So you go 12 weeks and then 12 weeks again. And that's something predictable. That way the people know that every 12 weeks, they will learn again how to build the business. And you can have twice a year the virtual boot camp for your middle ranks. And then once a year, you have the insight boot camp for your high ranks. So it's predictable. Everyone knows what happens twice a year and what happens once a year and what will happen when you get to diamond or whatever the name of that rank is for you. So just the concept is how it's a structure that people can guess what's coming next if they keep moving up the ranks.
Yeah. All right, I'm doing something state of the art with my team. This is one of the most advanced new technological breakthroughs ever done in recruiting. And I want to tell you guys about it, but it's still in the testing stage, the nascent testing stage. And so I can't give you all the details, but I want to let you know what I'm experimenting with. So you guys should be thinking about doing the same thing. By the time we get to the lab, I'll have a few more weeks of data and results. So I'll be able to talk about it more in depth. Right now, it's only been one time, so I don't have a lot. But this new top secret advanced technique is something we call home meetings. Here's the thing, guys. COVID came around, the lockdowns, we all got online, even our papis and mamas and abuelitas, everybody learned how to use live stream. and everybody made money. Every company did great in COVID because we were all prisoners in our dens and our living rooms and our dining rooms. And somebody would send you a text and say, hey, would you like to join a Zoom meeting on Thursday at 7 o'clock? And I'm like, oh my God, how excited. I'm going to put on my dressiest sweatpants and my formal sweatshirt or t-shirt. I can't wait to be on. And then, of course, after the lockdowns, we found out, when the tide goes out, we find out who's been swimming naked, as Warren Buffett likes to say. And so many companies are struggling since then. And so I'm going to give a shout out to Debbie Grisey, one of my team leaders. I said, Randy, I want to try a home meeting again. And I just think that people want to get out of the house. They're social animals again. They miss some of it. So we actually staged one at her house, and she had 17 people there, probably 7 team members and maybe 10 candidates, and got some people signed up. And so she called me again a couple of weeks ago and said, I'm thinking about doing a regular one, and I want to, what kind of format would it be? How should I best do this? Should I just play the recruiting video we have? And I said, no, you know what? Let's work on a template for home meetings that people could duplicate. And let's have some worksheets that people will fill out to get them interactive. And let's do a kind of mix it up. Let's have video segments we could play. And then so it could be start off with a 15-minute video. First they do a live intro, their why they're excited story, 30 seconds, then play a video, and then come back and sample the products with everybody and get them tasting and drinking and eating and whatever. And then let's do something about leverage. And maybe so we did one 2 nights ago, and we experimented with going back to a whiteboard, because that's always been, very compelling since Amway in 1959, right? And so we're just working on that stuff. And, at the lab, we'll be talking about it more. And for you guys, otherwise, of course, make sure you're following the newsletter at duplicationnation.com and our podcast, and Duplication Nation, MLM Pod. And I'll keep you posted on where that goes in the future. But just know that here's what I know with every fiber of my being. Mental health is horrendous in the world right now. There's an epidemic of loneliness right now. There are millions of Gen X, Y, Z people who don't know how to have a romantic relationship because they've only texted. There's 35-year-olds still living in their parents' house because they don't have the social skills of going out. Suicides and loneliness are epidemic proportions. And there is a hunger for people to be back at live events. And I can tell you, Jaime and I, starting I think even in 2020, we were telling clients because we did some events where, they had to be social distance and people had to wear masks, and you had to rent a ballroom that holds 1,000 people to have 300 people meet in it. And we said, you got to get people back in the real world again. And they were like, nobody will go, nobody's afraid, And what happened is they thought they couldn't get 100 people there, and we had more than 1,000 at the first one because people were desperate to get out. So just think about that. To be experimenting, like, what do you need to be doing with in-person events? Because, let's have some real talk for a minute. There's no bullshit. When Jaime and I do a program, we tell you the truth. Here's what I see in the space since after the pandemic. 70% of the companies are scuffling right now. And by scuffling, I mean they're flatline, or a big number of them are cratering, and they're looking to get bought. They're desperate to sell. They're borrowing everything. They're slashing staff. They're laying off. They're cutting back. And 30% are growing and doing amazing. And the constant you're going to look for in that equation, the 30% who are growing are doing in-person live events again. That's my experience of what's going on right now. So I said home meetings were the ultimate technological innovation, but of course, really, that's AI. And I know you have some thoughts about that, Jaime.
Yeah, I'm very worried about AI in our space. I'm very worried because I'm sure, absolutely sure, that it will destroy some businesses and some companies to the ground. And some other companies will leverage on it and will make a lot of money. And how do I know this? I'm not a fortune teller. I know this because it's the same that happened when social media came. I was one of the first guys on YouTube talking about network marketing. And when I started doing this, the people on my team were telling me, this is heretic, you shouldn't be doing YouTube, you shouldn't be doing Facebook, you're gonna fall apart because you are using this technology. But I kept using it, and suddenly I was a star in the company, and I was bringing a lot of prospects from YouTube. And that's something that happened to many people with social media. So all the industry got this FOMO, this fear of missing out from the next technology. Everyone who saw those people like me who got very successful with social media said, next time I want to be there. I want to be that guy that blew the numbers with the new technology. The problem that people don't know is that for each person like me who really got successful with social media, were 100 people trying to do it and stopped working with their teams and neglecting their teams because of social media, who were out of business and who are out of business until now. It's very easy. It's like my son with football players. My son is sure that he wants to be like Messi. He wants to be a soccer player because he has this amazing life, and he's not aware of the thousands or millions of people who are poor because they didn't study a career and they didn't start a business and they didn't do anything because they wanted to be like Messi, and they didn't. They couldn't get there. So that's exactly what happened with social media. And now, because of what happened with us, the amount of people trying to be the first one using AI and the first one changing the system to something based on AI, it's mind-blowing. Everyone wants to be the first one there, which it's very good if you learn what are the capabilities of AI. It's very good if you understand what's happening in the world with this and what can be done and what can't be done, but not neglecting your team. Not if that means you stop doing your presentations or you stop trying to meet people, especially because the impact of AI, it's going to be way different than social media. The main thing that you can do with social media is connect with people. So it magnifies your capability of connecting. And that's the main thing we need in network marketing. AI is different. AI won't bring you more people, won't make you connect more. AI is something that will help you do the things you're doing easier or faster, because you can personalize messages, for example, with ChatGPT, and that's very good because you can write better messages, but you need to do the work of thinking who you're gonna write to or meeting people so you have someone to send that message to. So anyway, my message to the people in here is that yes, be aware of what's happening with AI, be aware of what can be done, but understand the limitations of it. Understand that this won't replace your leadership. It won't be a magic pill. It won't bring you thousands of new candidates. And you will still have to do what we are saying here. You will still have to follow a system that may be easier with AI. But and one more thing, I know I shouldn't take more time on this, but one more thing. You will find 1,000 gurus telling you the only way to use AI with network marketing that will help you, that you won't have to do a call once again in your life. And you need to understand.
The shit that's out there. I mean, amazing. I saw a clip on Instagram the other day. It was like, they all like you. Don't be calling your friends. Don't talk to your family. Don't talk to anybody you know. This automated system, it sponsors 10 to 30 people a month. Autopilot. It's like, people, come on. I mean, it's the same shit that we heard in the 70s and the 80s, for you guys who are old enough to remember that, where they were called downline building systems. And, they had a such X by X forced matrix and only one, and the people are automatically placed. And they're, it's like, guys, the only free cheese is in the mousetrap. Please.
Yeah. Something that people need to understand is that no one is an AI for network marketing expert in the world. That's not such a thing. We are all learning together. We are all just trying to see what's working, and you should never learn something while destroying something else. So you need to take care of your team. And if you have spare time, then you can learn what's happening in AI. There are no experts, that's for sure. Even Sam Altman doesn't understand ChatGPT to the full extent. No one understands it to the full extent. And there's no one network marketing millionaire that became that using ChatGPT. So don't get fooled by all these bright lights. Those will only get you to a pit. Just be careful.
All right. This is what we used to say, last call for alcohol. At 1:45 a.m. in Madison, Wisconsin, when I was running nightclubs. Last call for alcohol. It's the last call. The recruiting lab is coming up in 2 weeks. We're not going to give you a pitch. We don't have any, we don't want to talk about it. Just what would you tell anyone? Last word on that before I have one more thought afterward before we sign off.
About the lab, I'm very excited because this is the first time we're going to share the system that we built for companies. Many of the companies that are actually growing right now, the reason why they are growing is because they have a tight system. And usually they hire us to build it for them. But this is the first time we're going to teach. And I think the last...
It's the last, but I guarantee you, if we do it again, it's got to be $50,000 or $75,000 a person. It just has to be.
Yeah, so I'm very excited because usually we teach the same stuff because network marketing is something repetitive. Usually you have one big leader doing the system for everyone. And so usually we don't teach this. We do this for the companies. This is the first time we're going to teach it. So I'm very excited about it.
All right, my final thought, guys. Let me tell you what the ultimate goal is for the lab, for everybody who's trusting us and coming there for 4 days of a boot camp adventure. The goal we have for them, and then for you guys who are not going to be at the lab, the goal you have to make happen yourself without the lab, somehow studying our books and our webinars and everything we got, and experimenting and testing and tracking and modifying. Is the goal you want to get to is where you are always the buyer. That's what the flywheel creates. What you never want to be is the seller. People say to me all the time, man, you're such a good salesman. I'm like, I'm the worst salesman on earth. I will never make a cold call. I don't even ask for referrals. I will admit this, put my hand on the Bible. I'll swear it in public, admit it. I don't even ask for referrals, because what would I do with a referral? Hi, Susie. Mary gave your name to me. Are you the kind of person who, keeps your options open? I would rather stick a fork in my eye than make a cold call like that. Okay? And don't give me all this shit. Well, it's a warm call because no, bullshit. I'm never going to do it. I don't ever want to do it. I will go with the fork every time. So I'm a terrible salesperson, but I'm a brilliant marketer. And what I know is with marketing, we create a dynamic where the candidates have pre-qualified themselves and stepped up and let you know they want what you have. And now you are the buyer because you are choosing who to work with. Right? I got a guy just texted me back. It kills me to do it, but I have to do it. He's like, I'm sorry I ghosted you. I know I promised to call on this and that. It was a candidate, a very successful entrepreneur who could really do well in our business. But I don't work with people who don't treat me with respect. I don't work with people who are flaky. I just don't. So when we had a commitment, he missed a meeting, I gave him another shot, he made a commitment, and then he ghosted me. And now he's got FOMO because obviously I'm doing really well and word is getting back to him that, wow, Gage is kicking ass and taking numbers right now. And he's like, he's really sheepish. And I'm just like, sorry, that train left the station. I'm the buyer. I know what I got. And that's where you got to be. You need to be the buyer in every transaction. And the way to do that is build out the structure, create the tools, do the training, everything we've just spent explaining to you. That's what you do, and then you will always be the buyer.
Amen to that. So, you need two things to be the most successful people in your town. Number one, you need a system. Number two, you need the leadership that everyone talks you about. So if you feel that one of those legs is missing, now you know where to fix it. Thank you very much for being here. We really love you. We are citizens of this amazing duplication nation. See you next time.
Peace, guys.
Hey, do me a favor before you go. Please rate this podcast and then share it with people you know who could benefit from the business building advice here. And then if you're watching on YouTube or if you're on one of the other platforms that allow comments, please get down below, give us a shout out to the community in the comments section. Thanks.